So can you tell me about the 502s and how would you describe your sound to someone that has never listened to the 502s?
Yeah, I can take that one. So the 502s, we like to call ourselves the happiest band on earth. We actually didn't give ourselves that name. There was a fan who said that to us one time after a show, and we thought, yeah, that really fits. So we've kind of taken that and run with it. Um, our lead singer Eddie likes to say it's kind of like if Mumford and Sons and the Lumineers went to the beach together. I like saying feel good folk. Um, it's just a really raucous, good time. We've got a banjo, a saxophone. I play piano. Nick plays bass. So like on the record, there's a lot of acoustic sounds. But then in live, we're in a live setting, we're always kind of trying to bring out a lot of fun surprises beyond that instrumentation. So yeah, that's basically my perspective of us in a nutshell.
Well, I loved all the adjectives. Well, like you
Good
said,
descriptive words.
there are many unique instruments. And so can you walk us through like your songwriting process with that many people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the so Eddie is the lead songwriter, and he actually brought me in to the band when it was just him and his two cousins back in 2016. I was on tour with another band, and I was involved in recording, and I actually got involved with the 502s to help finish those songs and produce the first album because we had to. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from just getting together in a room and playing a song idea. Sometimes Eddie will come to us with a song fully formed. Um, but oftentimes it's really just kind of like, hey, here's an idea of something that would be cool for the live show. I'd love to play a song that sounds like this or feels like this. Um, and then it's kind of up to all of us to help finish it. And even when, you know, after we get to the point that we've done the song and recorded it in the studio, we're constantly tweaking things and evolving things for the live show. So it's almost like they're never really done. We're always trying to make things better, trying to take things, even if it's good, can we make it great? Can we make it excellent? And a lot of it comes from, we just play uh, we we basically play the song until it's something that we all agree on and we all are excited to be a part of. And This last album that we just put out, the self-titled album, feels like a really complete expression of that. And we got, I mean, we've been on tour pretty much full time for the last 3 years. So we had a lot of opportunity where it's like we're staying in a hotel or an Airbnb, and we have an off night, so let's break out the acoustic guitar, let's break out the banjo. There was actually a pretty cool story of our song "Hey Honey" that spawned from one of Nick's ideas. Being the bass player, we actually had Nick play the banjo and came up with this really cool lick. That uh, it's been fun to get like everybody kind of involved and get their voice in on it.
Well, cool. I was gonna ask you about the self-titled album, so you answered that for me. And now I'll move on to more of the gear questions. So back to so many instruments, which is awesome. Like, what are the distinctive elements or instruments that define like the 502's sound?
Yeah, I mean, it's like very uh, acoustic guitar and banjo are kind of at the center of everything. I primarily play piano, but almost pretty much everybody in the band is a multi-instrumentalist.
Hmm.
So, a lot of songs are inspired by switching things up. Um, I'd be remiss to not mention the horns as well. The saxophone, the trumpet. That's kind of been a core of the sound since the band's earliest days, and I think the eclecticism in the instruments is a big attraction.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you guys, I mean, especially from a studio perspective, I mean, well, first of all, it's got to be a lot of fun to record a band, especially with that sort of diverse group, everything from brass to, the banjos and acoustic instruments and guitars. When you guys, kind of go into the studio, I mean, how do you, what's your capture process? Are you guys tracking this stuff live? Are you doing individual isolated tracks? And
Yeah, so we typically
Most.
will Yeah. We'll try and do as much live together as possible. Typically, like the rhythm section, drums, bass, and acoustic will all go live at one time, and mostly everything else is overdubs. I think we try and capture the live feeling of it. I don't think we've ever done a song that didn't have some component of the band playing live together, because that's really like kind of the magic of it, I think.
Well, exactly, and that's when I asked the question because like when I've listened to your stuff, that's what I thought was so cool, and I love like your description of the happiest band in the world because I was telling Bella before we even got on, I was like, man, I can't listen to their music and not feel happy, which I thought was really cool. But that's what I thought was really great is even listening to those studio recordings, like it felt like it was a live performance. It was really cohesive, and I felt like that was some of the magic there, and I think that's pretty cool that you guys are approaching it that way. Are like what kind of mics are you guys using in the studio when you're doing recording? Are you pulling out like any old Neumann stuff, or I mean, like I'm sure you guys have got some tricks up your sleeve, or at least your producers do up their sleeves of how to get that sound.
That's a great question. I don't know if Nick kept track of all the mics that we use.
I don't.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got my little AKT studio microphone that's right here that I could almost show you. It's like literally this thing right here. So we've done a lot of
Oh, cool.
vocals and just basic demo tracking on that thing. Um, we've when the band first started, it was the process has basically been like we'll demo in a house studio. When I was in Orlando, that was like the equivalent of this room that I'm in. But we've always tried to take the opportunity of like once the building blocks are set to actually get into a bigger studio that can handle a live drum set and can also isolate acoustic instruments. We'll typically have Nick go direct in, and sometimes that ends up being reamped, but yeah, I mean, it's like we've had the benefit of working with a lot of great producers and engineers in addition to what we have in the band. So there was one mic that we had Ed sing on at Fat Planet Studios in Orlando that I can't remember what it was, but I mean, they've got the Neumanns. You'll see the famous logos around. Yeah, it's just basically like trying to get the sound that we like.
I know the Stax was recorded on our EPs. The Stax was recorded on a really old Neumann mic, like something that was used like by like Frank Sinatra or whatever. I remember that. I remember he busted it out of like this really nice case, and he was really proud of it. I forget which. I can't tell you the model because I'm not like an audio engineer, but I remember that moment being like it was like a super old. It looked like something out of a museum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure like there's been Neumanns and Telefunkens and all that stuff involved in this, but I couldn't tell you the models.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's so many, especially when you get into vintage Neumann stuff, But
Yeah.
I mean, U87s are always classic. Nick, what's your bass amp of choice, man? Are you like an Ampeg guy, or what do you play?
Yeah, actually, at my heart, yeah, I'm an Ampeg guy. But lately with the 502s, like the tour rig I've been using has been the Aguilar stuff, which has been really good. I have a Tonehammer 700 head that I play through like a 212 cab, and that's really it. I don't have any effects, no compression. It's super old school, and I mean for the sound of the band and for what we do, that's all that's really needed. You know what I mean? Until we start getting fancy with effects, if that day ever comes, it may not. I might branch out to something else, but yeah, but I mean, I love the Ampeg sound just because it's big, and it's the way that I've always loved the bass to sound, like I love the sound of the bass through an old Ampeg fridge cab, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes some shows I'll play through that. That'll be my rig. But for the most part, when we tour, we try to slim it down as much as possible and try to maintain power and tone in a small package. So the Aguilar stuff is the stuff that works the best for that right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm currently using. But I've used all kinds of bass equipment. I mean, you name it, I've pretty much played through it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But
slim and efficient seems to be the way, especially, I mean, with a band as large as you guys are, where you've got a lot of different instruments. I mean, I'm sure trying to keep things simple is a focus. And we've had so many folks too, even through our program, like digital is becoming so prevalent. A lot of people that, used to take, 412 cabs like back here, around, but folks now just take a HX Stomp or something digital and run front of house. Sounds great. So it's so much easier too.
It is. I mean, I think for this band, like Whether we become all digital remains to be seen. I don't know. I think there's still an old school presence about the band in the sense that like I think the band needs to have the bass on stage, like that resonance, because it's part of like the rhythm, it's part of the backbeat of the band, and part of like if you ever see our show, it'd kind of make more sense because just how we interact and how we perform has a lot to do with what's happening on the bass and the drums, providing that groove and that feel. So that kind of has to be there. You take that away and you're kind of taking an element of the show away too. So at least where the show is at right now, which right now, our show is what we don't have any real lighting production. Like there's no real, like we don't have videography going on. It's just the band and we go up there and play our ass off and put on a show for you. And that's what we do. And that's where it's at right now, So with that show being what it is, you got to have some live elements on stage. So, I mean, yeah, for right now, there'll be an amp on stage. I use it as a wedge, I do have bass coming through my wedge and there's bass coming through the wedges on stage and everybody kind of has their own mix, but I still have like my bass, amp head and cabinet, and it's there as my wedge and I still have it behind me. And I use that as kind of my reference point. So,
yeah. No backing tracks. No digital trickery.
Just
no shade on anybody that's doing that, but we have the advantage of like there's 6 people who are good instrumentalists and also sing. So we try and have it all covered.
Something to be said for the simplistic nature, like your talent can actually shine through. But Matt, could you walk us through your keyboard setup?
Yeah, definitely. So it's been really exciting this last tour, the Great American Road Trip that we just went on. The biggest tour that we've done, and we made a lot of upgrades. Nick touched on the Aguilar setup. I have played many instruments on every 502's recording, primarily piano, some kind of real acoustic piano, and an organ, ideally with like the Leslie cabinet. So trying to replicate all of those parts on one keyboard has proved challenging. So this time I was finally able to upgrade to a double stack. So those are the 2 sounds I really kind of focus on, is just like a good upright piano sound and then some kind of organ that has just like a sense of control of the sound, the speed of the cabinet, like that kind of chorusy phasing effect. So for the piano, I'm a big chord guy. I actually have an SV right here that I recorded Magdalene and a lot of our other songs on.
Is that the SV2?
This is it's the SV1. Yeah, SV1 right there. Yeah. So I've had this, since like 2017, 2018. And that was the tour rig for a while. It's really heavy. I switched to a Korg D1 I think about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And I just bought my second one that I took on the Great American Road Trip. So, it's working great. It's a very simple interface. I don't love the Korg power cables because they're very short and they have a little stubby brick on them. But other than that, it's awesome. No complaint. And then so that's my bottom keys are the piano, which has a lot of leads and high melodic notes that I like to use. And then with my left hand on top, I got the first and only company I've ever used for digital organ is Roland. I used to have a VK8 that I used in the early 502's days that I would try to do organ and piano sounds on at the same time to varying degrees of success. But the one I'm using right now is called the VR 730. And I'm loving it. I mean, it's it's got the digital drawbars. It's got great control of the Leslie. I pretty much am only using one setting on both of these. Like I just kind of find the setting and the sound that I like, and then kind of let the tone come through the fingers, as they say. And maybe I'll branch out a little bit more, as I get deeper into it. But it's been a lot of fun finally being able to crack into the double keyboard stand on stage and have it sound good.
I love the simplicity of it too, man. Like, find a sound that works and roll with it. When you guys were doing studio recordings, did you have live real Leslies that you guys were using to make those tracks, or were you still using stuff from your Korg rig?
Yeah, we almost always would find ourselves in a studio that had a real piano and a real organ.
With Hammond. Yeah. Mhm.
And it's, there was one studio in Nashville called Battle Tapes, which was kind of fun because they had it set up in such a way that I could actually play live a little bit with Nick and Sean, on the rhythm tracks. So that was fun. It kind of added a different character, like being the keyboard guy. It's like I'll bring a digital keyboard along whenever we do recording, but it's really just kind of as a backup. I don't think there's really any substitute for the real sound of especially a piano in a room. Leslie, I'm a little bit more loose on.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also something to be said for, I mean, if nobody's ever experienced really being in the room with a real Leslie, especially when it's cranked, just that visceral experience and how the movement happens. I mean, they're just killer,
Yeah.
man. There's Strymon makes a great pedal called the Lex. It's a model of that. It's probably one of the best I've seen that kind of captures the sound, but being in the room with one it's a magical experience. It really is.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I used
Yeah.
to have an electric guitar pedal, that was like, it had some kind of Leslie branding on it, that did like a really amazing job of making the electric guitar kind of have that sound, and that really kind of filled out the room. And I could play a lot of really fun psychedelic sounding guitar licks. But this was for like a band or two ago before the 502s, so I haven't seen that thing in a while.
Nice.
Yeah, well, y'all have pretty much answered all of my questions. So I'll ask one more. So individually, who are your biggest musical influences?
I'll let Nick go first on that one.
All right, me. Well, it's hard to answer that question because I have a lot of influences. I mean, I go through kind of like phases of the moon. I go through phases of musical interest. I mean, I guess the bands that probably like stand out the most that I always revert back to are like, I mean, it's a melting pot of like the Beach Boys, Talking Heads, Metallica. God, what else? I mean, the Beatles. I mean, it kind of evolves, as you can see. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to answer that question, honestly. I take influence from anything that's good.
That's a good
You know?
eclectic mix too, man. Beach Boys,
Yeah.
Metallica, Talking Heads. I mean, dude, that's
That's barely scratching the surface. And I'm not coming from a place of like snobbiness or anything like that. Like it's just that's just what it is. I love listening to a lot of great music, and yeah, man. I mean, I like to be able to talk about music with anybody, and I mean, you can name an artist, and I probably either can talk about it with you, and if not, then I'm fascinated by it and I'll go and research it, and that can be anything. Like, I mean, and I don't mean to get off the topic of the 502s, but outside of this, I do live band karaoke, and that gig is all covers and top 40 stuff. I'm playing Journey every night. Yep. And I'm playing, Carrie Underwood and stuff, I mean, like, it's, so there's that too, and those songs are great too, but like that's a whole, I mean, there's aspects of that are really cool and can be influential too, but I just try to all use it to make the 502s sound better. My approach and my position in the band, the way I view it, is it's my job to make everybody around me sound as good as possible, and through my creativity and through having those influences as a bass player, both through the groove and through any kind of melodic or creative ideas I may have musically. So it's always been my objective to make, like kind of what Matt said earlier with Ed's the principal songwriter and he's the main lyricist. And like, it's my job to take those things, which are, essentially a couple banjo licks and a few chords at their core, and then gather Matt's ideas and gather Sean's ideas and Joe's ideas on sax and make those as good as possible and make it all cohesive, and make it into something very musical. And so that's my job. And I guess since we're having this interview and you guys are fascinated with us and our gear and our music, I guess I'm succeeding. So, but that's I don't know. Nick, like, that's a whole nother conversation. Like, I could talk about a band, like, I mean, hell, our last gig we did in Milwaukee, I went and saw Motley Crue, with the tour manager, like, and that was a killer show. It was actually beyond what I was expecting. And so there's a bunch of songs that they wrote that I love too. So that's hair metal. So I don't know, but yeah, I think the ones I named are pretty much the ones that I go back to the most. So, but name a artist, and I'm sure I'll have something to say about it. You know,
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Hair metal will always find a way to sneak into the
Yes.
rotation, no matter what.
yeah, it does. It'll always be around. I mean, like the band Steel Panthers, for example, like even though they're kind of a gimmick, I mean, what they're doing is kind of like, you know, this was cool, even in with all its cheese. Like there'll always be bands or artists like trying to replicate that sound in some way or the image. You know what I mean? Like it'll always be. It may not be as popular as it was, but it'll always be kind of around. You know, just because it's kind of embedded in our culture. So yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of cool 80s hair bands, you know, aside from, you know, Van Halen, and like, you know, you listen to like White Lion is underrated. Like, I mean, like that's a band that I listen to sometimes because, you know, their guitar player is really sick. And so I always love it. I'm a sucker for a good guitar lick.
Yeah.
So anything, a good guitar solo. So all the Aussie records, you know, you can't go wrong. But that's we're getting, I mean, that's a different conversation. But yeah, man, I mean, there's a lot of great music out there. So
Yeah,
but
that
yeah.
was a great answer.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Glad it was sufficient.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, well, I want to second like pretty much everything that Nick said, and you know, he is a guy that definitely does have a deep musical knowledge and repertoire. We actually know each other because we went to music school together down at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. Go Tars! And this is, I think I've actually kind of lost count of how many bands that we've played together in, but it's more than 3. So you know, it's been like an awesome partnership, and I think we're just like guys that connected because you know, we wanted to do original sounds and had a lot of interesting influences to pull from, and have always been able to kind of pull on each other when, you know, there's opportunities that have abounded. And yeah, I mean, I'm classically trained on piano, so you know, when I was growing up, I pretty much my connection to music was Bach and Beethoven, and you know, just these very heady and technical and evocative masters. And I still listen to a lot of that, mostly when it's like after the show at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm so amped that I need something to listen to that just like kind of calms me down and brings me back to center. You know, we both have played a ton of jazz, and bring that like improvisational aspect to it. You know, I mean, I transcribed Wes Montgomery, the great jazz guitar player, when I was in school. Had played a lot of his solos. Charlie Parker is another big one. And you know, I think Nick mentioned like Talking Heads. That was a really big one for like my musical evolution. And you know, a lot of more modern bands, of course, as well. Like Vampire Weekend's a big one for me. Big Paul Simon fan as well. You know, when I first started playing music, I started a pop punk band when I was 14. I've always been playing music, but when I started like making my own stuff, it was just kind of in that era. So you know, it's like as long as it's good and it makes you happy and it feels good, it's like that's kind of what it's all about. And that's kind of what I love about the era that we're in right now. You know, I feel like back in the day, you know, we were talking about hair metal. You know, like I feel like there was a moment where it's like you could listen to hair metal or you could listen to grunge, you know, and like those guys wouldn't even touch like, you know, hip hop or pop music. And like that's all gone now. And I think that's kind of a great thing about the moment that we're in. And you know, I feel like I'm absolutely in the right band because there's no wrong answers and there's no kind of genre limitations, really. You know, like we're definitely like a folk band, but there's a ton of rock and there's a ton of all kinds of other influences. You know, I think Eddie, our lead singer, probably listens to EDM almost as much as he listens to folk, and you know, whatever brings us the energy and brings us together and brings other people together. That's kind of what we're about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, you guys, thank you so much. I know we're right at time here, but I really appreciate, you know, you taking time to chat with us, and it's just so fun too. I mean, not only to, you know, nerd out about music and gear and everything else, but just to talk to folks that are true enthusiasts.
Yeah.
And again, I think the thing I will take away from this is the whole idea of the happiest band in the world. Because again, that's always what I feel like when I'm listening to your music. So I really appreciate it, man. We're just very thankful that you guys could take time to chat with us today, and we'll get all this wrapped up and published out and share it with you guys. So
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And Bella, we'll
Yeah,
see
man.
you on the 17th of August. Yeah.
I look
It's gonna
forward
be
to it.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually I think our first headlining gig in Birmingham. I don't. Oh no, I'm lying. We played at Saturn.
Saturn.
But
That's
it's been like over a year, so we're excited to get back to Alabama. It was a great show last time.
Yeah, Iron
So
City
cool.
is an awesome venue. So
Yeah, you guys will dig it. It's great. The room sounds great too. A lot of energy in there, so it's a great spot.
Cool. It's the
Awesome.
start of the
Look forward
tour
to it.
too. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the second show tour. We'll have plenty of energy.
well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's fresh.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank y'all
Awesome,
so
guys.
much again. So
I'll take it
Yeah,
easy.
no worries. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Appreciate
See
it.
y'all.
thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you guys.